so much for joining us tonight. I'm Julia Sheehan with the Whitman Democrats and our DEI subcommittee. And I want to introduce Dr. Angela Burke, who has over 20 years of experience working in schools, certificates in DEI and digital leadership from Cornell, and is really just passionate about equity, inclusion, and belonging, and is here to talk to us about DEI and how it benefits us all.
Love it. Look at you memorizing my bio. I don't know. I love it. We can skip the formalities now of who I am. I love that. Good evening, Whitman friends. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to skip the who I am because I thought you did a very nice job, and that's not the most important part, but more so why I'm here tonight. And I was invited here because we really want to unpack what DEI is, because I'm sure we've all been hearing a lot of different narratives, and we want to debunk any myths, create a common definition aligned with its original intent, understand the history, and walk out of here hopefully feeling like we have a better understanding of what DEI actually means. So if you're in the right place, if that's what you want, is that what you came here for tonight?
Yep.
All right, perfect. That's what we're going to do. So I do want to start with just explaining tonight, I'm really not going to use the term DEI. I'm going to call it what it actually is, because it's an acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And unfortunately, using pushing them together and coming up with that cute acronym is what has gotten us in this place of misinterpreting what it actually is. So when we throw out DEI, some folks don't even know what the breakdown is of that. So I want to be very clear that we are distinguishing diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to my best tonight to really spell it out and make sure we don't bundle it as a group, because that term has been hijacked and unfortunately been used in ways that it was never intended and does not define what it was originally meant to be. So I first want to start by talking about that this is not a new initiative. This is not something that we in the past couple of years have been like, we should start thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion. It stems from even way back when we were thinking about women's rights. Gender equity is really what the birth of it is, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is three unique concepts intertwined to create the idea of DEI, but they don't live separately, and they each have their own definition and their own function. I want to really start with what DEI is not before we go down the rabbit hole too much of what it is. I am going to define and unpack each one individually, but I really want to talk about what it's not, because I think this is where the misinformation comes from, and this is where it's been hijacked. It is not about quotas. It is not an obligation for companies to fill so many positions with so many minorities. That's not what DEI is. Affirmative action, when that was a thing, which it no longer is, that is what it stemmed from. And so I think a lot of people are mixing up affirmative action with DEI. DEI was never intended to be quotas. And the other misconception is DEI is not a law. It was never put on the books to say everyone must implement DEI. Affirmative action, again, that's where the misconception comes from, because affirmative action was a law based on the Civil Rights Act. DEI was never a law. It's a concept. It's an idea, a framing. So it's not just for Black and brown people either. And I think that's, again, why people mix it up with critical race theory, which is about race. DEI is about all of our differences, not just culture and ethnicity. It is not reverse discrimination. It is not meant to say those who have been in power for a while want to strip them from their power, right? And it's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean if we all believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion that we believe in someone loses and someone wins. There's room for everyone to be winning. And the idea is that we want to elevate and make everyone win. No one has to lose in this game. All right, so I just want to make sure we put out some more, everyone can get comfortable, and all right. I love it. You all packed the house. Keep them coming, keep them coming. All right, so, and it's also not about lowering standards, right? In fact, it increases the chances of things being merit-based when you actually have a diverse pool of people competing for positions versus it being a very minute group. For years, companies have relied on personal references or pulling from the same group of colleges. They kind of have their go-to, this is where we recruit from. And so when you broaden that, which is what the diversity and equity inclusion is trying to do, then you really are making sure people are the best fit and that they have to be qualified and be the best for the job. This is not lowering standards. We're not saying we just want to fill it because we need a woman or we need a black person or Hispanic. That's not the point. It's to say, are you truly the best? And I'm going to make you compete with someone else outside your pool to show that you're the best. So it actually increases standards by this definition. All right. We're going to unpack. There's tons of room up here in the front. I don't bite. All right. I want this to be super interactive tonight. Has anyone ever used Canva Live polls? Perfect. So if you have a device, if you have a cell phone, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to, I'm going to open up the polling. You can either scan the QR code, which is up there. It's a little tiny, it's hard. Or you can go to canva.live and enter that 8-digit code, K462, K880. Go ahead and work on that while I talk through what I want our poll to be, right? Because I want us to make sure we are understanding any personal impact that diversity, equity, and inclusion has had on us personally. So 8 people in our, I can see up here, you see it's live. This is fabulous. So this means, so don't put anything in yet. I just want to make sure you can get in. And this can be anonymous. You don't have to put your name in. I want you to think about if you yourself or anyone you care about in a workplace or community has needed to utilize some of the following. Parental leave, right? You just had a child, or your child just had a child, someone you care about just had a child, and they would like maternity leave or paternity leave. A flexible work schedule to stay at home and take care of a loved one, someone sick, right? Mobility access, and I don't mean permanent. You don't have to be permanently bound to a wheelchair. One day you sprained your ankle, you're on crutches. Do you need a ramp, an elevator, some mobility access? Have you ever needed vision accommodation, right? I have been in denial that I'm going blind for a long time. But when I finally realized it, I was like, can you help me increase the font on my computer, please? Right? Hearing accommodations, right? Do you need some type of amplifier, which a lot of schools do to make sure that all of the kids who may have hearing issues can hear? Equal pay for equal work. Mental health support. Religious or cultural holiday time. Gender neutral restroom. And again, it's not just yourself. Think about yourself or someone you care about. Support for neurodiversity. That could be as simple as you need a quiet workspace, right? You can't work in a place where people are running around crazy, or you're the type of person who processes slower. So if you know there's a meeting on Friday, please send me the agenda by Thursday so I can process and get ready, because I can't be on the spot, right? That's just a neurodiversity. Have you ever needed something like that? Or interpretation services or language translation, because you've been in an environment where English wasn't the first language. So I want you to think about if you or yourself have need any of those. In the poll, I'd like you to drop the numbers of the ones. So if you've had 2 and 5 or 6 and 7, drop the numbers in and they'll be anonymous, just so we can get a sense of how it impacts us personally. And while that's happening, I just want to, because a lot of folks don't understand how these things are results of initiatives from believing in having inclusive workspaces where everyone gets their needs met. And that's what inclusion, the I in DEI is inclusion, right? Making sure that if you have a specific need, that it is being met so that you can perform your task or job to the best of your ability. So let's, whoa, I love this. Look at this. Wow. Woo. Wow. Way more common than we would think, because we take a lot of it for granted. Because while diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives do stem from there being a specific person with a need, it benefits so many of us, right? So let's think about like the curbs on sidewalks. They were originally intended for people with wheelchairs, but if you're a woman with a stroller or dad with a stroller, you can use it too. It doesn't, so just because it is intended for a specific audience doesn't mean we don't all get the benefit from it, right? Think about how it was a lot of times companies only did maternity leaves. Those work well for fathers who want to stay home with babies as well too, right? So this is fabulous. Thank you for participating. I'm going to close the poll now, but I love that you all are proving that this is something you are familiar with, you see the benefit, whether it's yourself or a loved one, or someone you know personally, you can attest to the fact that diversity, equity, inclusion is something that we all benefit from, no matter our stance in life. So we talked a lot about what it's not. Now I want to go through each one individually. So we understand that diversity as a term means just a variety, right? It means there's a lot of something. And it doesn't mean diversity in your ethnicity and your culture only. Yes, those are some of the things that you can be different in, but you can be different in your beliefs, in your age, in your abilities, in your gender. There's so much variety. And when we talk about why are companies so intense with recruiting and diversifying their workplaces, it's because there has been so much research that tells us and proves that companies that have more diversity, and again, when we say that word, I'm not limiting it to race and culture, but when we have diversity in the staff, we have more productivity, right? Think about if you are anyone here own a business or a manager in some? Okay, so a couple of head nods. I want you to think, would you ever only market one audience? Like, I only want to sell to Black women between the ages of 40 and 45. No one else can buy this product, right? That's not how it works. You always want to diversify who your customers are in your marketing. When you have all like-minded people who have the same life experiences, it's really hard to open up your mind to think about how can you include other markets. So the more diverse a team is, the more likely they are to be sensitive to others' needs, to market others' needs, and make sure that they are producing and selling products that masses want to buy. So diversity is already inherent. And no matter what your organization looks like, you can be 90% white male, there's still diversity amongst those white men. There's just that two people are the same. There's a lot of diversity amongst us, whether we like it or not. However, there has been an intentional push over the years to make sure that it is some of the more overt diversity, right? Instead of it being just, well, we have different political beliefs or we have different education levels. We would like to see people who actually look like some people in the market that we're trying to get. So you will hear companies making explicit efforts to try to diversify their staff. But again, that's not mandate, it's not law. It's just a concept because it thinks it's good practice. Like, it would be great to have other people on the team so that we can have a diverse perspective when we're sitting at the boardroom and we're thinking about it, or we're working in education and we're catering to a diverse group of kids, right? No matter what your mission is, your goal, your business is, it's beneficial. No law states that companies have to do this, and this is what I think there's a little bit of confusion. Affirmative action did do that. Diversity, equity, inclusion is just the concept that you value diversity. So that's the D, right? Now, this is not a lecture. I know I'm talking a lot, but one of my favorite educational researchers, John Dewey. Anyone ever hear of John Dewey? Okay. He says, one of my favorite quotes is, "You don't learn from the experience, you learn from reflecting on the experiences." So for that, whenever I meet with folks, I want to make sure you have reflection time, right? So I'll talk a little bit and then pause and give you some time to reflect. So I would like, this is our reflection time now. And reflection doesn't mean a quiet. Some of us are quiet, and that's the neurodiversity. Some of us are like, let me just think to myself, let me process what she said, what does that mean to me? Some of you are like, turn to your neighbor like, what did you hear? This is what I hear. And I want to create that space for everyone to do that. So whether it's turn to a neighbor, get up, walk around, or think to yourself, I want you to, the following prompt. How does diversity enhance your own environment, whether at work or in your community, right? So take a second. I also love music, so a lot of times I embed music into my slide. I'll turn it very low, but I am not going to be offended if someone's like, that's distracting, I can't think and reflect with music going, right? So I want to give up the opportunity also for you to walk around and maybe find someone who's not next to you to reflect on this. But let's take 2 minutes to just think about how diversity within itself enhances your work environment or your community. Anyone have anything that would be good for the group to hear? An aha, or someone share something that you're like, you know what? I think everyone should hear that. Yes.
One of the things I always think of, and this hit chord with me, the movie Apollo 13.
Heard of it? Don't tell me.
They're all stuck up in the capsule in space. They're running out of oxygen, and all the scientists couldn't solve it. But the guys down there in the low level get some duct tape, do this, do that, do that, and they saved them. And when I talk to my staff, I would say, everybody's important, from the custodian, vets, parents, everybody. And this is exactly what.
Yes.
Schools, I think, is a good example.
And one of the concepts I hear that I like, the phrase, the best idea wins, right? Not the person with the title, the C, it's who has the best idea, and they should be allowed to contribute. That's when you get people really working for their title, right? Like making sure that everyone has a place. I love it. Anyone else want to share?
I just want to add to what you just said. The best idea wins. This should teach us to allow everybody to have an idea.
A place, a platform.
A platform. And kind of like we're talking about, when you limit platforms, you limit solutions.
Yes.
You limit everyone. So.
Absolutely. I love it. Yes.
Yeah, I teach at Missouri Community College, which is the most diverse community college in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I meet students from other cultures as long as staff every day of my teaching. And I'm constantly learning. There's always more to learn. And I think it's very valuable to understand that people see the world in many different ways and that they're all legitimate.
And diversity, equity, inclusion is not set out to change anyone. It's meant to elevate your acceptance of others so that you can then see those differences, appreciate them, value, and embrace them. It's not saying you need to be different in order to be. No, it's you need to allow other people to be who they are and not shun them for that or fault them for that. So I thank you for sharing that. All right, the next letter in our acronym is the E, right? Who has seen this image before? Yes. Does this feel productive in society? But it's the reality, right? The reality is there's this barrier that exists, and some people have the right tools to overcome the barrier, while others don't. But this is what a lot of us do. We think it should be equal. Everyone should start at the same point, right? No matter what your background is, what barriers you might have faced in the past, we feel like this is what should happen, when really the reality is everyone needs something different to do the same thing. Now, if I was vision impaired, hypothetically, then shouldn't I be able to have some of those different fonts, or maybe have the reverse lighting on my computer? I need that, right? If I'm expected to perform a job, but I have a different condition than the person next to me, I should be allowed to have the accommodation I need to perform the same task as the person next to me. Whether it's hearing, mobility, we say that we believe in equity, but then sometimes we fight it when people get different privileges than us because we feel like it's not fair, but we have to understand the privilege is given because it's the only way they can actually have access to the task or the job at hand. So thinking about the difference between equity versus equality is understanding that it's okay for someone to have a different accommodation or privilege to help them have access to something, whether it's education, job, equal pay in a field. So I want you to now think about this image, and I say the reality is here. Unfortunately, this is what we're dealing with. The one that's not pictured, that I picture in my own head, is what I call justice. And does anyone know what that one might look like? Why is there a barrier in the first place? Can we eliminate the barrier, right? The fence, put it down. I mean, metaphorically, in this case, it's probably safer so the ball doesn't hit anybody. But metaphorically, why are there so many barriers in the world that we have to try to overcome? And if the real justice is, how can we work towards removing barriers, and then we don't need so much of this, you need this and you need that, when we could just remove the barrier and everyone could have a more equitable approach to it. So now reflection time. I do want you to think about this idea. Given our variability, we are all different. We all have so much diversity amongst ourselves. And not just inter-variability, you from you and you from you. We have intra-variability, right? I like to think about on Monday morning, if I spent the weekend getting my 8 hours of sleep, a good healthy meal, and no fighting with my son to do the things I want him to do, I'm going to show up on Monday ready to go. Yes, I can do all the things you need me to do. I'm on fire. I'm ready. But if on Wednesday I have not slept, I'm a little bit irritated, my son is driving me crazy, then I might say, you know what, I need a little bit of time to get myself together. I'm a different person than I was Monday because the context has changed, the environment has changed, and that's okay. I need maybe a different accommodation today than I did Monday, and that doesn't make me less than. It just means that intra-variability I'm dealing with. But I can probably get back to what I am, but when the environment changes, then I'll be more successful. So I want you to think about the inter-variability amongst us, but then also that intra-variability that we all have. And I want you to answer the prompt, given that variability, should everyone be given the same resources to do the same job, knowing that we have variability? So go ahead and have that about 2-minute conversation, and I'd love to hear what you think and what you talk about. Anyone have any ahas or real life examples that you shared with someone to give us some personal connections that we can make?
Well, I've got a real life example.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Bring it on, bring it on.
A friend of mine, and she doesn't mind me talking about it, she has MS, and about 75% of the time she can walk independently without any problems. But about 5% of the time she needs a wheelchair.
Okay.
Most of the other time she'll alternate between a cane or crutches, depending. But she can't guarantee that she needs one or the other.
Yeah.
So she needs the highest accommodation available to her,
Which is the flexibility.
despite the fact that she might not need it all the time.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
So I have dyslexia. I think a lot of people. I try to be very open about that, particularly because we have children that, that need to hear that.
Remove the stigma.
Yeah, to remove the stigma. I'm not ashamed. And it gives me some skills to look at, particularly when I was on finance committee, financial flows and other things. But what I'm crippled with is writing. And people have abused that, right? And they've sort of said, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she can't write it down.
Yeah.
I now have ChatGPT now.
The resource that you
You
need.
really can't mess with me now, but it does all the graphing and everything, boom.
Love that.
But yes, I've had experience where my capability, my proven capability, was undermined, probably in a political way, publicly. And I was able to overcome it with tools. Somebody came to me and said, hey, look at this tool, you can use this.
Nice.
But, it's hard, it's hard to sort of just have these very limited ways to look at somebody.
Yes.
And I know you know what I'm talking about, that you meet only this one aspect of someone, and then there's that, I would describe it as a violence against their personhood.
Ooh.
And that's
So it's received.
Holly Murray, that's not me.
I love it. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I
you.
absolutely appreciate that. It's always helpful to hear, especially from our own community members and friends, right, that they experience these things themselves. Now, the last part of the DEI acronym is inclusion. I like to think of it as this, right? Diversity is, you invited me to the party. Thank you. I'm so glad to come and be here. But unfortunately, no one asked me my dietary restrictions or my music preference. So when I got there, you didn't know that I am a vegan and I'm gluten-free. Feeding me is hard, right? So the chicken wings and the pasta bar, while it might be really nice, I'm hungry. There's nothing for me to eat. I don't feel included in the party. And while I love some country music, I prefer to dance to something with a little more pizzazz. So the music choice is just really not my standard either, right? So you diversified by having me present, but diversity is not enough. Diversity just means they're there. I could very well be there and have no sense of belonging whatsoever. The real power comes from building inclusive work environments where everyone actually feels included. So inclusion is, you said, hey, we have a fruit tray over here, right? At least there's something for you to snack on. And the DJ's taking requests. Do you want to go give a request really quickly? Then the real sense of belonging is you come up to me while I'm dancing and say, can I dance with you? Let's get together, right? Now I have a real sense of belonging. So diversity is nothing on the table without having this sense of inclusion. We really want to make sure that everyone actually has this ability to feel like they connect and they belong there, and not that sense of like, well, you can't do these things, so so therefore you don't belong here, right? And this is where the concept of making sure that we need, that poll we took, parental leave, no matter what you come with, right? If you need mobility access, if you need vision accommodation, hearing accommodation, this is where inclusion shines. It's not about thinking any one particular person. It's not about a race thing. It's what are the barriers that exist from everyone being able to participate and feel included? How can we remove some of those barriers and make sure everyone feels like they belong here, they have a voice at the table so that we get more diverse perspectives, and that they see that they are valued as a member of the team. That's what inclusion and inclusive practice is all about, and that's what we're aiming for here. So I want you to now think about this prompt. Why is it important for everyone to have a sense of belonging in community or in a formal workplace? Go ahead and have a chat about that. And I love the personal stories. If you can share, that's always helpful too. Anyone willing to share either anecdotal, analogy, or just an aha?
Example,
Yes,
Major League Baseball, Jackie Robinson, Armed Forces, 1940s, 50s, 60s. End of discussion.
Oh, you can unpack that for some of us. Come on, give us a little more. He's like, mic drop, exactly. That's it.
Tom, I don't think that's possible.
You should talk there, parrot.
Are you kidding? I have your thing.
Are you feeling a sense of belonging? Is he making you comfortable in this?
I
This is good.
We need the same medication.
I love that. Anyone else? A mic drop experience? Yes, right here.
Yeah, when you achieve belonging, then you're strengths focused and not deficit focused.
Yes, I love that. Growth mindset. Yes. Love that.
Somebody can contribute, maybe with a friend.
Yes, and something else that was brought up is you never know who has a good idea to contribute if we keep this class system of like, you're not in the C-suite, so you don't get to sit at this table, or you're a line worker, so why would you tell us what might be a good marketing tool, right? Making sure that everyone has that sense of like, I think I have something to share. Is there a platform, a space created for me to share that? Because who knows, it might take off and be something that's lucrative for the business or helpful for the school system, depending on the arena you're in. I want to use this time to have kind of more of a dialogue instead of me talking at you. I want you to think about what myths you might have heard, and maybe you don't categorize them as myths. Maybe right now you walked in here with some, this is what I believe DEI to be, and so I don't want to label it a myth, but I would like to unpack some of the things that you may have been saying to yourself when you walked in here. Is like, is this true? Like, I think this about diversity, equity, inclusion, but I'm not sure. This is a safe space right here for us to unpack some of those things and talk through what some of those things may be true, and some of them may have some merit to them, whereas some may not be. So I just put up a couple as an example to get your brains going, but I want to give you like a think time, and then I would really like to have a dialogue of like, this is what I believed before this, or this is what I heard, or this is what other people, this is what my neighbors are saying. Can everyone feel safe? As soon as I said neighbor, she was like, right here. We won't tell. Go ahead.
So I have someone who I've tried to open the idea from, and as long as I don't say, hey, this is DEI first, he's like, that's a great idea.
Until you label it.
Except he thinks that companies are required
They think, okay, and that is, yes.
include people. And I'm like, in their talent pool, yes. In who you're interviewing, yes. But nobody says you need to hire 4 of these and 3 of those.
And even I would say that statement isn't completely true, because not even in their hiring pool, they're not required to. Diversity, equity, inclusion is not a law. There is no statute that says everyone has to. It's a concept that says if you believe that it's the right thing to do, then you should be promoting these things. You should want to embrace diversity. But there's nothing on the books that says this is required of companies. So I would I love that, thank you.
What about federal contracts that require that there be certain positions offered, certain contracts offered to businesses owned by women, businesses owned by minorities? Is that
That was a thing until January,
Of this
when
year.
an executive order was signed that says even that is no longer a thing. So I'm glad you brought that up too, because that was to make sure that at the federal level, and even at the state level, that monies were being offered to. And again, even that was about widening the pool. It never necessarily landed that so many contracts went to. If you look at the data, it still was a disparity between who was getting these contracts. When they started to unpack it, they saw a lot of them were owned by white women under the guise of their white male husbands to be able to get the contracts, because women are considered a minority. So even when you dig down the data, it wasn't coming to fruition, although it was the mandate that you have to at least try to open it up and have more diversity in your contracts.
It's an executive order that did something that, in essence, took down the barrier, but not necessarily for the right reason.
No, it dismantled it, yeah. So,
And looking at your fence analogy, I mean, taking down the barrier, but what if the barrier is necessary? Shouldn't we just be taking some of the boxes away from the guy in the yellow pants? And giving, why can't we redistribute the boxes?
There's a hole in the fence.
We've got somebody in a hole, and we've got somebody standing on 8 boxes. Why don't we take the boxes away from the guy in the yellow pants and move him over to one side?
I love that. And the analogy I like to use, because I am an educator by trade, is if I have 2 children and every day for a year I am packing 5 cookies for my one child, because I know she loves cookies, and my son could do, doesn't really have a sweet tooth. So she gets 5 cookies and she's used to it for a year. But then one day my son says, "Mom, I want a cookie." Well, I'm not going to, as the manufacturer, start cooking more cookies, but I am going to take one of my daughter's cookies and give it to my son. So now she has 4 cookies and he has 1. She comes home irate. "Excuse me, why do I have less cookies than I used to?" So the argument from her is that her brother has taken away from her, right? She feels like she's losing now because she's getting less than. When the reality is she was always getting more than she should have, and it was my problem from the systemic standpoint. Why was I giving her all the cookies in the first place? That was a systems error. I should have done better and been like 2.5 each or something fair, but I set her up for this mentality that now she believes she's entitled to have 5 cookies every single time, and can't see that she's not losing by having 4. She is still getting her sugar intake for the day plus some, but she doesn't understand because this kid came along and is taking away from her. And that's what, unfortunately, the mentality is why should I give up something? But you're really not. You're really not. It's about, can we all win? And then as a community, we grow and get better if more of us are winning and we elevate. If you're already here and someone comes up, they're just pushing you up higher, not stealing your position, right? Thank you for sharing that.
There was one, and I don't believe this, it just kind of horrifies me when I hear it, and I hear it from the contract's point of view, someone less qualified gets the position because, and I'm pretty sure that's not how it works.
At all.
But
What CEO would allow for someone with less qualifications to come bring down their productivity and bottom line, right? At the end of the day, no manager or any person in a leadership position is going to be like, since we have to have a woman or a black person, even though they can't do the job, we'll let them. There's no research or data to prove that has been happening whatsoever. It's just not true. It definitely is this feeling we have created for ourselves, but the data does not support that.
I think what bothered me most about when people say that is that it says that there's nobody that's different than this white uber educated male that could possibly exist outside of that, privileged space for anything, and that's what bothered me the most.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that.
That's okay, right?
And often that person is actually more qualified because of the barriers they have had to overcome. And so you're missing on more qualified people when you don't have.
I myself, being a black woman in education, every school district I've worked for, I've been one of if in this last district, I was the only person of color in an administrative position, and I've been in districts where I'm maybe one, maybe two, and I have always felt myself having to go above and beyond. If I missed a meeting, I was scrutinized way more than anyone else who had missed a meeting or didn't file a document on time. I always had to work harder. A microaggression that I've experienced for a very long time is I worked really hard to receive my doctoral degree, and so I have been requested in my environment to be referred to as Dr. Burke. And a lot of times, I still walk in a room and they say, "Hi, Angela," but they'll refer to the superintendent as Dr. whoever. But then to me, it's just Angela, and I'll be like, "Dr. Burke." And I'm like, I sign my emails. I'm like, "I'd just like that respect, please." But I couldn't get it because they couldn't see me as being equal to someone else who holds that same degree as me.
Thank you, Dr. Burke.
Why is the Trump administration slamming DEI?
Oh, I love that. It has been hijacked. The term has been hijacked. First of all, that's why I said we're going to unpack it and not just call it DEI, because it is not a thing. It's not a law. It's not a program. It is the intertwining of three unique ideas, which we...
Why is he slamming it?
Yeah.
So, first of all, he's telling the narrative that it is the same as affirmative action, which is when it was, affirmative action is no longer a law, but when it was, that was the requirement, that was quotas. That was, you have to give so many contracts to, you have to make sure you are opening up the pool, and he feels like that is reverse discrimination, and then it's that white people are losing because we're putting minorities at the top, which is, it's a myth, it's not true, but that's the narrative that he's been telling people of why it's a good thing to get rid of it.
It's divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Well
very,
said, well
very simply put. I love that. You're absolutely right. It is.
In terms of affirmative action, I know it's passe, but it did a lot of good. And the rule was, which I think many, many people did not understand, a person had to be minimally qualified in order to be considered.
Yeah.
So this idea that we're hiring unqualified people was not
Preposterous.
true. It did a lot of good. I was very impressed, those of you who can remember the Anita Hill hearings, and how many prominent black lawyers were interviewed, not just Anita Hill, but others, and they were able to go to Ivy League schools because of affirmative action. And they were a very impressive group. So I think that myth that it lowers the standards and it's, it's not the best qualified people is just, it's a myth.
Yeah. It's not a zero-sum game. Yes.
Another thing that just came to mind is I think inclusion is like telling the stories of a lot of different groups, diverse groups too, and not just having this one history or one story that gets repeated. I work at Massasoit Community College, so local.
Woo woo. Higher ed in the house.
Yeah, and I work with TRIO students, so first gen in low income and student with disabilities, and a lot of them happen to be of color, but not all of them. And I had the opportunity to go to Howard University and the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. With them. And I cannot even begin to describe how amazing that experience was for me to watch my students see their history brought to life through that museum. And it's unfortunate that that's under attack right now. It doesn't surprise me because it's telling the truth of what's going on. But it starts with the most awful part of our history, and then each level goes up higher and explains the beauty of our Black history and all the contributions. And there's a lot of different, each museum celebrates a different part of the American experience. So I just think that's an important part of inclusion too, is just telling the truth and the stories of everybody's experience. Not just
Yes. I love that. Thank you. Saw right here too. Oh, go ahead. Fight over it.
I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute, but decades ago when I started my career, we actually had in-person training, and when I became a frontline manager, we had to learn how to interview people. So we went to classes, and HR worked with us, and one of the sessions was about looking at resumes and looking at the names and opening our brains. And I'm going to admit, it went from it reminds me of the Key and Peele skit with substitute teacher, if anybody's.
Yes, yes, yes.
So like, we had to open up our frame of reference and say, okay, we don't have, Tom and Mary, we have these other names, and these, you have to, as if you're hiring, you have to not pass judgment on the name.
Yep.
And it's okay to say, and how do you pronounce your name? I want
Yes.
to try and get it correctly.
Yes, yes.
This is a new name to me, like, it's fine. And to have those discussions, and it was just, I think I was like 23 or 24, and it was really eye-opening to me, growing up here on the South Shore. And, but I appreciated it, and my company was really diverse, and we had people with physical disabilities, very diverse culture. We had people, young men from Pakistan that came over, and so we had a little bit of a language barrier, but as we got to know each other, it was women in positions of authority. I mean, it was really a very diverse group, and it was, just what you said at the beginning, enriching for everything, bottom line. And I had a supervisor that when she was stressed, she loved to cook, but she loved to cook. She'd come in with food from Vietnam, food from Mexico, like all these different things.
Benefits.
I want more of this. It's just so much richness.
Yeah.
Every which way you can.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I love that. Right next to
I think it's a sad thing that the corporations now don't have that kind of training anymore, because we would literally leave our desk, go to a room with our peers and get one-on-one training, whether it was role-playing, whether it was watching a short clip of a movie and talking about it, and no one does that anymore, it's all video.
Well, yeah, it's not in person, but the companies that are still staying true to it have acknowledged that it actually litigates some risk and loss that they could have, right? Think about, in today's climate, just some of the differences of generations, right? So it seems like most of us are around the same generation, and some young folks in the crowd, but we come from a generation of like command and control, like you expect, you told directions, you do it in terms of the workforce. Gen Z and millennials, right? Now, if you were like, just do it, they'd like on the Yelp, like 5 stars, 0, like this is a bad employer, they don't know how to talk, like they're just different than we were. So when they find that they are giving their managers and frontline folks that training of how to have the correct conversations, they are avoiding proactively any lawsuits or things that could hurt them in the long run, because when you learn how to respect people's pronouns, understand gender differences, generational differences, you are setting yourself up for an environment that doesn't put you at risk of offending or hurting someone that could later come back to bite you, right? So.
I'd just like to know from your perspective, it is about race now in the times we live in. So how do we react to that and change it from what we've just been describing here? It has become about race and only about race.
Yeah.
Or you're being described as not doctor, but I think it's less about you being a woman and more about the fact that.
Yeah.
So what
I agree.
do you do about it? Because it is so controlled in our society that this is about race.
It is, and unfortunately, I don't agree that it is, and it's just because it's been hijacked in that way. So what I try to think of is helping people see the data, which shows that African Americans have not been the primary beneficiaries of any DEI initiatives that have been taken in place. So anything that companies or school districts have done have not been the direct benefit from us. So I think people can step back and allow themselves to see factual data, to see it, then they will realize it's not about race until someone decides that they are going to believe that narrative. So I don't subscribe to it. I don't let people force that on me, because I'm like, I know the facts. I understand, and I actually agree with you that so many people have made it that way because that's what the news is saying, and that's what the executive orders are hitting. But unfortunately, that's just not the reality. We're not the primary beneficiaries from it. And so if that's the case, then it can't be about Black people, right? Unless someone decides that I want to believe that it is.
I could be wrong, but I feel like like people of color and other people that are in marginalized groups have more of a chance more than ever to talk about their experiences. So this may sound funny to everyone, but I have learned a lot about, you know, anyone that's from a different culture of mine to like a lot of Black people about their experience through Twitter. I follow a lot of people on Twitter who are Black or trans or something that is not something that I identify as or experience that I have not gone through. And the years and years of me like seeing people talk about their experiences had made me realize, wow, I don't experience any of these things. And I think maybe that has made the climate more aggressive because people do have the opportunity to have a platform to talk about their experience, whereas in the past, a lot of like Black voices were minimalized and they didn't have opportunities to talk about their experiences and have people that don't go through that listen to them.
I appreciate you saying that, because as a consultant, when I work with either school districts or companies and they want to know how do they increase their equity, you know, and have inclusive practices in their workplaces, there are tons of frameworks, there's lots of research, and there's things I do formally, but at the end of the day, the real simple solution is to approach the work with an open heart, an open mind, and listen, and let people tell you their story instead of walking in and having a preconceived notion of their story based on whatever implicit bias we may live with. Because the reality is, as humans, we have implicit bias. That's just a fact. It's not a negative thing. It's a flight or fright thing that our brain does. Like if we see a snake, the bias is, it could kill me, let me get out of here. That's your brain working. That's what implicit bias is. You're like, I see something that looks like a threat. I know I need to do something because I've been trained to think. Someone who grew up with snakes might not see it that way because that's the bias or the non-bias that they've had. So it's okay to have bias, but those are the things that help us navigate the world and protect ourselves. But sometimes we have to check it at the door and say, let me just ask these questions. Like someone said, how do you pronounce your name? Like, it's okay to just ask. Tell me your story and don't assume their story. That's the real bottom line of how we can all individually make it a better environment for each other. Of course, again, there's some frameworks, there's some activities, lots of exercises. You can take an implicit bias test. But at the end of the day, be open-minded, open heart, and listen. And I know you've been...
Yeah, so just to get back to your question here, when someone had brought up that race is always at the forefront
Yes.
of focus, and that's the narrative that's being portrayed in the media, but, and you said that DEI initiatives or efforts have not benefited, right? Well, the opposite, that persons of color have not benefited.
Not primarily, yeah.
Yeah, so who is
White women,
white women?
according to data.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So what about, so I think of, I'm a DEI practitioner, but I focus on disability.
Okay.
inclusion. And so the disability community has always been like, you know, although it's the largest minority group in the world, it's been the group that has had the least amount of space in the workforce,
Yep.
at least,
I
right?
agree.
And efforts to, you know, in school as well, kids are still segregated. So they certainly have not been, you know.
Benefiting either, yeah.
Yeah, and for many years, up until, well, in January, I was saying, if your DEI initiative does not include disability, it's not inclusive.
It's not,
right?
yeah.
Or it's exclusive.
Exactly.
And now I'm like, okay, no, let's, you know, you don't want it attached to DEI because it's
That,
also, it has a
yeah,
negative connotation.
it's sad, it's sad.
It's taken another beating, which is making that community
Yeah.
have a lot more.
And unfortunately, and luckily, the disability community has ADA, which is law to fall back on. So it's easy to separate yourselves, and that's proof right there, because DEI is not a federal mandate, it's not a law, whereas ADA, civil rights, those things are laws. And that's why at the beginning I showed the slide of the history. Those are the different things that happened over the time that created this concept of why don't we just have initiatives that allow all of these things to be covered under one umbrella. So they exist separately as laws, but there is no DEI law per se. I want to make sure I get all, yes.
So, I don't even know if this is like a question, I just feel like I need to say it, but I work for a company, I'm a corporate event planner, and since everything that's happened, they have upheld that they are like still with DEI, like they're not abandoning it, like great, although I feel like it took a while for them to say that. And then, so I plan events, and what we have always had since I've been there is when you register, if you want, it's optional, you can put your pronouns, and that will go on your name badge. And I have an event that I'm doing this May, and they have decided to remove that from the name badges. And initially, like, I was just like, and I know it's because this event and the audience sways white male conservative. Okay. And it's just like upsetting when it's supposed to be about inclusion, but it's like, oh, we don't want to offend the, but it's like, and I guess I don't know how to do, or like I want to say something, but like I don't know what, or.
She looks like she's going to jump out of her seat, so I'm going to let her go ahead.
Only to say something that I'm going to repeat my son's mixed race, and he'll say something about their friends, and he'll say something about me being white, okay? And he'll say accurate things about, you know, white women don't A, B, C, or whatever. And they're accurate statistically. And then I feel pain, or I feel upset, and I'll say something like, but, which I should never do. I should just let him talk. And he turns to me, and usually when I say my but, and says, if it don't apply, let it fly. You know. And what I'm devising from all of this is, ultimately, I have failed to meet that individual person, and I have put all kinds of categories, even on myself. I am a white woman, right? So therefore, this painful act I can't hear. And I would say something to them like, you said that you would meet diversity and inclusion, and you should offer that option and hold true to
the thing is, if you don't want to put your pronouns, it just won't be there.
And I'm glad you said, that's why I pulled up one of our last slides, because when companies are saying we're canceling DEI, or we're not subscribing or putting money towards it, because that's the only real thing that they can say they're canceling is funding any initiatives that support some of the work. But you can't take away people's pedagogy, their feelings, their, like, I want to feel included. Like, that doesn't go anywhere. But you may no longer fund some of the accommodations, right? You might no longer fuel setting up mobility access for people. That's unfortunately a real thing. So when companies are saying that, this is what I think of. Ask them, so does this mean you do not embrace diversity? That you want things segregated? You're looking for conformity? Or you endorse inequities and don't believe in social justice? Because that's actually, if you break down the words diversity, equity, inclusion, and they say they're canceling it, this is what they're saying. These are the things that they're looking, this is what they're going for then, right? And so that's why we have to unpack it, and not just, we can't keep helping the word be hijacked by continuing to use DEI, as if it's this coined term that means one thing. We have to say, which part of the D, E, or I are you canceling, right? Because diversity? Are you firing half of us because we're diverse, right? You can't get rid of diversity. That's not going anywhere. Are you saying you don't believe in equitable situations where a certain person needs an accommodation, they're going to get it to do their work effectively? Or do you not want us all to feel included when we show up to the building every day? What part of this are you canceling that you no longer want to support and embrace? And that's what individually we have to do and be brave, is make people own it. Make people unpack it and tell us which part of it is troublesome to you, which part of it hurts your life, which part of it takes away your livelihood or your ability to function as a citizen in this town, right? Why is it that you don't believe in diversity, equity, inclusion? Push back. That's your power. You understand it, so your power is to make sure even one person, if everybody in this room pushes back to one person who may adopt the mentality, then we've done our jobs, right? So I do want to end with giving you some curated resources, because I want this conversation to continue. You all have been so awesome, vulnerable. I love the sharing. If you don't have a device right now to scan the QR code, there is a bit.ly if you want to write it down and open it later when you get home. But this is just a Google Doc with some resources that I've curated for you to either read, listen to, or watch later on so that you can continue the conversation. The first two links are additional Google Docs that I've put together. Let me move out the way, like fun facts about DEI. It's just some of the data we started to touch upon about how many white men hold CEO roles or political positions, just so you can get the data, right? Because the facts, we don't have a lot of time to talk about all the facts, but I want you to walk away with knowing some of those facts. And then the second link is is some more of the myths, right? I don't think we covered them all, but that's just some of the myths or the critiques, I would say, because that's going to arm you, hopefully. If someone comes to you with a critique and they say, yeah, but it's, I hope that this document will then give you some language to counter it, and then even a fun analogy to use, right? We talk about, this one's not in there, I use the orchestra and the quilt, but I heard this one a couple of days ago, is anyone play golf? Right? A silly question. He's like, I was talking about golf earlier, yeah. So, do you get one club?
No,
How many? 14, right?
too many.
Because each one serves a different purpose. You need diversity within your game to do certain things differently. It's about having different tools in your, right? And so that's one of the analogies you can use to help people see, well, why is this helpful? Why do we need this? And there's a couple of other analogies in there that I hope you'll find useful in your everyday life, because I look at this group as the warriors who came here today so they can go out later and fight the good fight, right? Am I right? Are you all the ones to do that? So thank you for inviting me into this space. I appreciate it, and I hope that these resources are helpful to you. I wanted to make sure I gave time for anybody who was hoping to get to town hall. I see some heads nodding, yes, right? There is a vote tonight for some people like, I don't care. But the override is going on, and when I heard